what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box below this video once it's rendered. Most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Mark, Ranty, Sleeping Warrior, and A Plain Truth. How are you all doing?
Doing the best, gentlemen.
Hong Kong.
Nate, can I drop out of this and join on Skype? Because I want to do that before any drongos from the Ball Earth side join. I want to respond to Scott Veach.
Yeah, if you drop, I'll call you on Skype.
Okay.
Did you see Globebusters last night? Anybody?
Either what?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it last night. It was cool.
It was a pathetic 20 reasons why the Earth's not flat, wasn't it?
It was some guy, he's made a video, isn't it, about 20 reasons flat earthers can't 20 questions that flat earthers can't answer. So they're very easily debunked, and I think they did a good job in doing that.
Is it a young fella called Cosmic Skeptic?
Something like that.
If you call yourself a skeptic, you're not in a position to take well, you can't take a position on anything because you're a skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the wrong name.
But he gave a couple of nice shouts out for Nathan, though, to be fair.
Yes, Nathan got mentioned. We're fed up with that now.
Should we do some housekeeping? Any signs of curvature, anyone?
Yeah, Slice Barcane keeps saying that he's got curvature in my videos. He's been invited for the last 3 or 4 episodes on, and there's still no response from the Sly Monster. So, Slice Barcane, if you're out there listening and paying attention, let's hook up sometime. Let's discuss your claim.
Axial rotation? Anybody seen
Nope.
any signs of that?
Nope.
Not for the axial.
Pressurized system next to a vacuum? Anybody seen any signs of that?
I mean, Ghostbusters.
Red's
Ghostbusters.
Rhetoric's got the explanation for that one. He needs to have an invite. So if Reds is out there at any point, or any of his drongos that follow him, worship and adore him, please join. Let's have a chat about gravity. Let's talk about how we can prove gravity to prove this pressurized environment that you claim we all live in.
Yeah, we had this conversation a couple of days ago. If he's getting gas pressure, the pressure is the force exerted on the container. So where's he getting the pressure from? I don't really understand. It'll have to be explained, I'm sure.
And where's the container, right?
Yeah, that's where you get gas pressure from. The container, i.e. the pressure exerted on the walls of said container.
Yeah.
You want me to share?
Gravity produces the container itself. You just can't see it.
That sounds like nonsense.
That's what's there, Nathan. It's what's there. Gravity is the force that is unseen and seen, unfelt and felt, unpressurized and pressurized. It's there.
This force that's negated by the soles of your trainers. That's the same force, right?
It's the positive force that's negative. It's the great negator. Gravity is the great negator. It negates everything while affirming all things.
Amazing.
What would happen if you put dry ice into a flask and then do a vacuum on the flask? Would it disperse or would it stay down below?
It'd stay down below, wouldn't it?
Well, then that doesn't help us, does it?
Dry ice has a mass, so it should drop to the floor and then stay there in an insulated environment. Actually, no, it would burn. Wouldn't? It's water in it. It's frozen water, so it should turn to steam. I would have thought.
Yeah, well, when we see dry ice, it usually clings to the floor, doesn't it?
Yeah, but when
Because
you remove the
it's
vacuum,
heavier
when
than
you make
air.
it to a
So
vacuum,
remove
it
the
normally
air.
boils water. So I would expect ice in its solid form to change to a liquid and then burn off straight away and become steam.
But if it disperses within the vacuum flask evenly, then we've proved our point. But if it's stuck low down in the vacuum flask, then gravity is holding the air to the Earth. Did you get my hypothesis?
There's a guy with a vacuum chamber online that you could contact him and ask him to demo it. I don't know. I can't remember what his channel name is, but look up tests in vacuum chambers online, and he's got like numerous receptacles, containers. You know
Okay.
that thing that we need for a pressurized environment.
Yeah.
He has numerous receptacles that he can plug his vacuum chamber into, and you can make a request. I'm sure he'd do it.
Mark, but are you saying that the form of the dry ice would be maintained in the vacuum, or do you? Because Anthony's describing the fact that it would alter its form because of the vacuum itself, and so you would end up having the dry ice converting to water, and then because of the vacuum, it would then boil and then steam off. So then you would just have gas.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see what it does. We're saying that you can't have pressure next to a vacuum, but they are explaining, but because of gravity, that creates sort of a some form of barrier. Can we test that?
It's a lot of bullshit, let's be honest.
That question probably concludes the housekeeping with a couple of exceptions. Any proof of R, anybody?
R. Nope.
Nope.
No? Molten
Nope.
iron core that self-perpetuates? Any sign of that?
No. No sign of the baller that was going to come and tell us about it as well. We've been waiting 2.5 months.
Okay, I can see Anthony's now ready if he just clears his Skype page, and we'll pop Anthony up on screen. You ready for us, Anthony?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. Right,
And
Scott
you're on
Veach has
screen.
made a video claiming wrecking Riley in 5 minutes or less. And if you look at the duration of the video, it's 11 minutes 44. So I don't know why you play.
Quite a catchy name, though. Wrecking Riley.
Yeah, but in 5 minutes or less. So he's claiming something and then like smashes his own claim by double the distance, right? So clearly I don't know why he's put the title for that. Makes no logical or reasonable sense for a guy to claim that it's 5 minutes or less, but the video takes nearly 12 minutes. Scale, size issues there perhaps. But I have to play the first 2 minutes of this because I need to respond to what he says and how he words it. So if I just play it for a minute or for the first 2 minutes, we get to the third minute, and then this is the point that I'm going to address, and then the rest of the video can be dismissed. So here we go with this.
My name is Scott Veach. The channel is called Vinny Vidi Vici. I came, I saw, I veached. I'm calling this video How to Wreck Riley in 5 minutes or Less. And the reason I'm calling it that is because I'm going to wreck Riley in 5 minutes or less. You see, up until this point, I've genuinely been trying to show them the subtleties and nuances of perspective and angular size and how that affects the curve calculator. But I'm quickly beginning to realize that Nathan and Riley, they're not exactly what you'd call nuanced. So, okay, fair play, I thought. Maybe my arguments have been too subtle. So I thought maybe this time I would focus in on their argument. I mean, they've had, a month to work on this thing. It's got to be pretty airtight, pretty brilliant. Maybe we just poke it a little, give it a stress test. So now if you can't remember exactly what the argument was, here's the basic gist.
The problem appears to be that they apply that value against the full height of the target that you're looking at. So, for example, a mountain at 1,000 feet, when it's 30 miles away, it's not actually 1,000 feet anymore. It has an apparent size reduction due to perspective, and we should apply the refracted hidden value against the reduced height because of perspective.
So there you go, pretty simple. He thinks that we should apply the hidden height against the apparent height. And so that's exactly what we're going to do.
Right, so I'll pause it there for a sec. He claims, and he correctly cites my words, which is better than what Sean Hufford does. Sean Hufford regurgitates my words into something that they never were and then tries to debunk me based on that. This time, Scott Veach has actually cited my words. And let's just be clear on what the claim is. It's the apparent size change over distance, right? But is this what he demonstrates in the video? Let's see what he does in the video.
So what are the elements of the scenario? We've got a flat plane, we've got an observer, an obstruction wall, an object, and a light source. The observer's eyes are perfectly flush with the top of the obstruction wall. And that means that this line here is the eye line and the obstruction line and also the horizon. Now the obstruction line is the line that tells us what is visible to the observer and what is not. Anything that's below this line cannot be seen by the observer because the wall is in the way. Anything above this line, well, that's something that can be theoretically visible to the observer. Now at any point along the ground, we can ask a question, what is the hidden height here? What we're asking is from this point to this point, what is the distance? So now in this case, the answer is 5 feet, always 5 feet. And what we want to do with this number is, according to Nathan and Riley, this is their method, we want to subtract this from the apparent height.
That's not true, is it? We're not asking people to subtract the hidden height off the apparent height, off the actual height. We're asking for the angle, the height of the object to be reduced because as a function of distance, it appears to get smaller. That's the claim. So that's what he's just said there is not our claim. That's misrepresentation. That is not what we're asking. We are not asking for the hidden height to be taken off the actual height. That's not what we're asking. So this is from this point on, the rest of this video is based on a misrepresentation. We're asking for the actual height to be reduced, then apply the hidden to that. We're not asking for one to be taken from the other.
Okay, so we got a bookshelf. This bookshelf is 9 feet tall. In actuality, it's 4 feet wide. It is 8 feet away from the observer. And what we want to do is we want to move this bookshelf backwards. We're going to move it back another 8 feet. We're going to double the distance from the observer. Because we've doubled the distance, we know that we will reduce the apparent size by half.
Correct. So he's reducing this bit we're good with. He's increasing the distance away from the observer. So he's going to reduce the target height by half. This is correct. We're good at this bit, even though it's a misrepresentation, but we're good.
And so now we need to figure out, well, how much of this apparent height, apparent sized object do we actually see? Well, the Globers and anyone that understands this will tell you need to reduce the actual height by the hidden height. But Nathan and Riley absolutely insist. They have totally dug in on this. They claim that we subtract hidden height from the apparent height. Well, if you look.
Right, so we do not claim that you subtract the hidden height from the apparent height. What we're saying is you need to reduce the apparent height down using some mathematics, then apply the hidden value to that. So is it going to be seen or is it not going to be seen? That's what we're going to say. So I'll just give. I'll play it again now because we're getting to the crescendo of his misrepresentation here. Watch what he does. Pay attention to this bit. He moves this observer, and at the same time as he moves the observer, listen to what he says.
You see, the hidden height is actually larger than the apparent height. So we know the number we're going to get is negative, which means that we're not going to see it at all. What they say that means is that the apparent size reduction, the angular size reduction, has shrunk it all the way down so that it's completely behind the obstruction point. It's completely behind the wall or completely behind the curve.
Correct.
And so I guess that means for this guy up here, I guess that means when we place it completely behind the wall. So we can't see it at all, they would say. Now, it's incredibly important for us to remember something. The actual physicality of the bookshelf has not changed. It is still 9 feet by 4 feet, and it's still sitting in the mud right here.
Right. So the actuality of the bookcase has not changed. It is still sitting in the mud. It's still at the same height. But the only time it's like that is when you put the observer nose to it, right? And that's what he's done. He's moved the observer from over here to here to try and maintain that height that he needs to be able to maintain, to basically try and make me out to be something that I'm not, which is making a point that I'm not making. I'm saying that the observer, when stood over here, the thing reduces in height like he showed, and he showed that it sits behind the wall. That's exactly the position that Nathan showed with the DVD cases and the car in the background just the other day. So what he's doing is showing that our position is correct, but then he has to move the observer to here to maintain the claim that it's the actual height of the thing that you're looking at, because it hasn't changed its physical height. Well, that's only if you move the observer from here to there. So put the observer back to there, and then you can't make that claim because the height of the object has changed. You demonstrated it by dropping the new block behind, and it was smaller. So basically, he's deliberately obfuscating the point, right? And it's reliant on moving the observer to reduce the distance between the observer and it, therefore maintaining its aspect ratio. And that is the point. So M. Scott Veach, you are either stupid or dishonest. Which is it? You can't have it both ways. You either put the observer back because you've made a mistake, and then reduce the aspect ratio as a function of distance, the way we claim, which you correctly demonstrated, or you're deliberately misrepresenting the position and claiming something that's based on moving the observer, which would be dishonest. So you're either stupid or dishonest. Which is it? So I hope I've made that clear.
The chat's asking you to carry on the video a bit more.
Okay.
Go ahead then. Go on.
When we carried it over, okay, and we dropped it in the mud, we could look and we could see, okay, well, the obstruction line is right there at 5 feet. So we can physically see, we could touch. There are 4 feet by 4 feet of wooden block that is above this obstruction line. And it is there, and nothing can change that.
Yeah, but this is all based on putting the observer nose to it. Like I said, you need to put the observer over here. So this is a futile point at this point, because this is all based on a misrepresentation. The observer should be stood here, and then you should be reducing this down, because it's not just the fact that the angle changes as a function of distance. The size of it changes as the distance increases as well. So not just does the angle get smaller, but the height of this thing gets smaller. So this is all based on the observer being here, which is bullshit. That's not the position in real world. He's maintaining the height by removing the distance. I'm trying to pass it off as true. This is wrong. This is dishonest. He knows he knows this. I know that he knows this is wrong. Now, other people, if you're not a leader or a protagonist, you're going to just believe this because M. Scott Veach says it's okay. So I'm referencing one guy who said to me, well, if a baller explains it and says it's okay, then I'll accept it. No, this is a baller explaining something that's misrepresentation and dishonest. So you can't accept this to be anything more than what it is, misrepresentation and dishonest. So even if I play the rest of the clip all the way through, we're not going to get anywhere, because the point he's making is based on moving the observer. Nathan, do I need to carry on?
Does he change that flat line to a curved line at any point?
No.
I think the chat wants you to play a few more seconds, apparently.
Okay.
Occupies this space. This is a fundamental geometric physical reality. Nothing can change that. Okay, so we go back to our observation point. This is 16 feet away. 16 feet away, we turn around. According to Nathan and Riley, we can't see that 4x4 wooden block anymore.
That's correct.
According to Nathan and Riley, apparent size, angular size, has reduced it all the way to the point that it's completely hidden by this wall.
Correct.
That's correct.
And remember, we're talking about perspective effects, because it's actually still there, but they think perspective is causing us to not be able to see it. And just to help you have an intuition about what we're talking about here, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have ever played basketball, but what we have is a situation where an observer is 16 feet away from a 4x4 wooden block. Turns out that it's essentially the exact situation of a free throw. The backboard of a basketball, about 16 square feet, and it's about 15 to 16 feet away.
Yeah, but the problem is, look where he's not put the base of it. The base of it should be down here, because that's what he's showing on his orthographic drawing. The base of this bit here is lined up with the base of the wall. So why has he not got this bit here lined up with the base? In which case, this bit here would then fall behind the wall, exactly as Nathan and Riley are saying. The guy can't perspective, and he's trying to mislead you with dishonesty and deception. The guy's a moron. I mean, am I the only one that sees this? Nathan, do you get what I'm saying?
Well, we watched this video together, and then I was literally making a video coincidentally about exactly this point.
The guy's dishonest. And if he's in chat right now, get on the panel. Let's hear what you've got to say for yourself. I don't need to go any further in this video, because there's nothing in this video that's anything further than what we've already discussed. You demonstrate clearly that when you've got the orthographic view, which is what you've done here, but you've reduced the angular size of the thing, it sits behind the wall. However, you've got the base of your thing with the bookshelf behind the wall. But on this perspective drawing, your base of the bookshelf is not on the same line as the wall. Why would that be? Pardon?
Gentlemen, did he say that if you move it twice the distance, it becomes half the size?
Yeah, I don't know whether that's.
He's wrong. What about the inverse square law?
Yeah, I don't think he's doing it. I don't think he's meaning to be pedantic or meticulous with the point. I think the point he's making
that's
is that
a major point, though. He says it's half the size. It's not. It's quarter of the size. And also that straight line that everybody's standing on, in his world, it's a curve.
Yeah, which is also our point, because if this was bending away from you, instead of being on a flat plane, then this thing drops even worse.
It's just stupid.
Yeah, this thing drops even more, because then the base of this would not be on line with the base of this here. The base would be following the curve, and it would be down here somewhere. And because it would be down here somewhere, the height of this thing then drops even more, which is my point, which is Nathan's point, and we are united together on this point. It took a while for me to explain it because there's no science on a flat Earth, right? But once we realise what we're talking about, he's demonstrating our point, but somehow trying to fudge it, making it sound as though we've got this wrong, but he moves the observer. When you put the observer back again, basically this thing does drop behind the wall and therefore proves our point. But this is obviously based on a flat. Put this on a curve and this thing drops even further. Now I don't see how there's anything other than dishonesty here. Scott Veach, if you're watching this and you're not triggered enough to get on the panel, then you're worming away. So I'm going to call you a coward, a liar, and a dishonest representation of the Ball Earth model.
Not just yet, Anthony. I have a good explanation of, well, not a good explanation, but of what's going on. But can we watch the rest of the video? Or
Spurs? Well, I don't really want to watch it anymore because basically I don't see any value in the rest of it because this is the point that we're the crescendo of the point. But I also don't think Spurs should be speaking for Scott Veach. He's the one that's made the claim.
I'm not speaking for him. Oh, no, not at all. I've got an understanding of what's happening, I think. But
no, but I don't want you to argue. I don't want you to play devil's advocate. I want him to be responsible for the representations that follow my point. And only him, because why would you? Because I would then suggest that perhaps you'd been sent in as cannon fodder.
No. On the contrary, what it appears to me, because like you were saying, it's very suspicious when ballers or certain people respond or answer these things. And I was discussing with Mr. Scott, and I was like, well, what's the problem? Is he lying? Is he mistaken? What's going on? He's saying, well, he's mistaken. He's trying to change something. So it came to me that I don't know if this is true or not, but are you changing a system of how we, is this natural for everybody, or is it Mr. Scott is sticking to a system of perspective, laws, numbers, and he's saying that what you're doing is changing that idea?
Can I try and tackle that, Anthony?
Sure.
Yeah.
So he's ignoring perspective. It is as simple as that. What we're doing by looking inside elevation is making our view of target and observer and any targets in between equidistant from our viewing position. So we are the same distance from the targets as we are from this guy's head. Now, when you look through the eyes of this observer with these two lines drawn from him, things in the distance get smaller. So this can be demonstrated in very small scale over a few feet, which I did yesterday, and it took me 2 minutes just to demonstrate that there is a secondary function that also causes things to be obscured, and this is a fact of life. Forget about the curve. Just as a fact, things can be obscured by the nature of perspective. But what all of these globers are trying to do is say we do not need to account for things being obscured based on their angular size, because when we look inside profile, we can draw a straight line and see that you've got a line of sight with it, ignoring something that all of us take into account every single time we look at something, and was demonstrated in those Blu-ray discs and a car. So the car in the distance is significantly smaller, therefore can be obscured by 2 or 3 millimeters, the top of a Blu-ray case, because it's much smaller. So you absolutely, unequivocally can obscure things by virtue of perspective, and this video is denying that. So,
correct.
To conclude, Scott Veach is a perspective denier.
But he's also a liar because he's projecting his crimes onto me. In the chat that I've got with him on Nathan's DVD box, he's trying to claim that I'm being dishonest. Yet he's the one that's changing the rules of perspective and trying to. It's this movement here. When the minute he moves the observer from there to there, that's where he denies perspective. And he also passes it off as my crime, but this is his crime because the only time that bookcase is at its full height is when the observer is in this position. However, we don't see the world like that. We observe the 1,000-foot mountain at 30 miles from 30 miles. And when he does that, the height of the apparent height of the bookcase reduces down in height, just like the DVD case did, just like the mountain at Barrow did for Ranty, when the little 2-meter waves or the 2-foot waves were obscuring the whole coastline. How is it that I'm lying when he's projecting his crimes onto me? So if you're a ball earther, you're either a protagonist that pushes this nonsense, in this case Scott Veach or whoever, or you're a sheep that follow it. Now, I'm not going to name him because he's asked me not to name him, but if you take the view that if a baller explains it, then I'll accept it because that's okay. Then if you're in that mold, then you're following somebody that's basically deceiving you with dishonesty and projecting his crimes onto me. He's the one that's changing the bullshit. I'm the one that's applying it. He's bullshitting it. So if you accept that, then you're a fool. But if the reality is that the only time that bookcase is at its full height is when you're stood in front of it with your nose touching it.
Sorry,
All
enough of
the other
Anthony,
time.
sorry to interrupt. Enough of the cartoons. So I know you've got my video queued up. Can you just show it so we can see what happens in reality without any curve involved? If anything, a bit of an uphill slope, but that's an aside issue. Can you just show it? Because that shows that you can absolutely have things being obscured purely by virtue of perspective. Something which they do not account for. This is our point. So this is representative. Sorry, if you can go back and just pause it, Anthony, right at the beginning. So this is representative. Obviously, this is a photograph, or akin to a photograph. It's a video. But this is akin to, not actually, a side elevation. I'm trying to keep the target and the observer. In this instance, the observer is the camera. Well, me, because I am actually observing it at this point. But you've got all of them about equidistant. So they are all the same relative size. This DVD... Oh, Anthony... This Blu-ray case is roughly the same size as this Blu-ray case. However, if you click play, Anthony, when you move to the actual observation itself, the photograph, i.e. what we would be comparing it to, you see that obviously the case behind is smaller. Now, if you move it further away, i.e. you produce the angular size reduction, it's now being obscured. So you can see me putting it down, and it's behind this DVD, even though it's on basically the same plane, slightly uphill, if you want to argue it. But ultimately speaking, the angular size reduction at distance is not accounted for when you look at things side on or draw cartoons of them, but in real life it does apply. Now, after this sequence, you'll see that there's a car that comes from the right-hand side of the image and just gets completely obscured by the Blu-ray. Obviously, this car is probably 3 foot, 4 foot high. Obviously, this section of the Blu-ray is a couple of millimeters, yet it manages to obscure the car. Simply by virtue of perspective. Things in the foreground can very easily obscure things in the background. Very easily. Something which is never accounted for. This function must be applied prior to the curve calculations. In other words...
So Nathan,
go on.
Can you just say what M. Scott is saying in terms of your video? Let's say he was looking at your video and you're saying, you know, this is the position. He's saying something like, well, no, this is not.
Well, what he's saying is when you remove yourself from the observation, so at the moment, this now isn't the observation anymore. I'm looking at the observation taking place, which is what M. Scott Veach does. So if you go back to M. Scott Veach's tab, you'll see that we see the same view. We've got my head, the side of the head of the observer. Well, the image that this is comparable to is not a side elevation. No picture ever taken by anybody in human history takes a picture of their own observation. It's impossible. But that's what he's saying. Let's look at an observation of the observation in side elevation so we can see everything equidistant. And if you draw a line from the top of my lens to the other DVD, you've got a line, you can see it. Therefore, you can always see it according to M. Scott Veach. Doesn't matter how far away it moves, it's always visible. No, when you actually look at the observation itself, you've only got to move it a matter of feet away from the original observation, and suddenly its angular size reduces and it disappears. Nothing to do with curvature. There's no curvature involved in this little demonstration. Literally, there's no curve, but we're still seeing obstruction. It's still vanishing behind something else. Well, that's not ever accounted for. The object itself isn't in the calculator. The target, you as the user of the calculator, just go to Wiki and say, how high is the mountain? Well, no, you need to actually measure the angular size of that mountain in the observation and then apply the curve calculations to it. No one's ever done that. No one's ever accounted for the fact that objects in the distance get smaller. No one accounts for it. And that's the bottom line. All they ever do is put you in side elevation and then say, but from the side, we don't need to do perspective. That's all they ever say.
And that's true. From the side view, you don't need to do perspective because that's orthography.
But we don't present side views. Cameras don't take side views. That's not...
Correct.
The camera can't take this picture. It can't take a picture of yourself in your own head while you click the shutter. That's an impossibility. You never, ever, ever see this. This is not comparable. why we would ever need to compare it to a side profile when we're looking down the barrel of the camera is where they are hiding perspective by keeping you equidistant from target and observer. When you are the observer, the picture doesn't include you as an observer. You're taking the picture. So there you go. That's hopefully a decent enough answer to your question, Suez.
So I just want to show the comments that's been said.
Yeah.
He's trying.
Sorry, go on. That's it.
My comment is that M. Scott Veach is trying to complicate and obfuscate a really simple concept. On a plane, things get smaller with distance. End of point, which is this. The further things go away, things get smaller. The apparent height gets smaller. The actual height of all of these lines, the actual height of all of these verticals is the same. But because of perspective, they shrink with distance, right? End of statement. That's it. However, on a ball, they get smaller and drop with the hidden value, and is also affected by an ever-increasing bulge all at once. Then there was Then there was numerous replies from different other people. So I'll just go down to his response to that. Ignore all that because here we go. No, Riley, you're a liar. Well, we've just demonstrated clearly that things appear to get smaller, and you've moved the observer to compensate. That's a matter of record, proven to have lied repeatedly, and you're lying again here. Really? I made no such claims about the moon. No, we made the point. You can block out the moon with your thumb. Basically, you're denying that you can block out the moon with your thumb. That's basically the comparison that you're denying. So I don't care that you didn't make any points about the moon. We made the point about the moon because it shits all over your point. And it's accurate, it's right, it's credible, it's the counter. See, here's a case where you actually only have two options. You try and project, really. So who's the one that's projecting here? Is it me or is it you? Lying or idiot? You either understand my argument and know that you're lying, or you don't understand the argument. Those are your only two choices. Make it wisely.
No, wrong. The other way round. We understand your argument, and you are lying.
Yeah, he is literally lying. Okay. So he says something again, and then my final comment is, oh, by the way, this is what he's done. In his video, at the beginning of the video, he played my words. But what he demonstrated was not the words that I said. He's demonstrated a lie. So when I said to him...
So there's no rush, isn't there?
No, there's no rush.
So when I said to him that M. Scott Veach, he said, what are you even referring to? I played your own audio precisely because I have enough integrity not to want to make a mistake. You, on the other hand, evidently told Nathan that I claimed you couldn't block the moon with your thumb. No, that's not what I said. We used that example to illustrate the point of perspective. We did not say that you said anything about the moon. I said
by his example or by his standards, or I qualified it in my video.
Yeah. So then I said, you played my audio, yes, but then you did not do what my audio said. You moved the observer closer to the target. You moved the observer and then claimed that the actual physicality has not changed. This is the misrepresentation. It's not my words at the start of the clip. I clearly said the apparent size change. And it goes on, but basically I conclude by saying you can't make your point if you don't move the observer closer, which was my point. So ultimately, M. Scott Veach, you are dishonest. You're misrepresenting perspective. All of these vertical lines are all the same height. They just appear to get smaller over distance, which was my point. You moved the observer to put it nose in front of it and then claim that the apparent height of it had not changed. But in Nathan's video, we can clearly see that two DVD cases of the same size one will be shrunk and hidden because of perspective. So objects in the foreground do obstruct stuff in the background. You are a perspective denier. You're dishonest, and anybody that follows you and accepts your word because a ball has explained it is literally stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it's so glaringly obvious when you look at the cars going up the hill in the background. So the white car on the right, I don't know if that's in frame, yes it is. The white car on the right is bigger, considerably so, than the cars going up the hill. If you just scroll back up again, Anthony. Oh, okay. There we go. So the cars in the foreground are bigger than the cars in the background. I mean, this is like, ever since this conversation has come up, we've been using the Dougal example. You know, these cows are small, those cows are far away. And it is that simple. You know, why anybody would ever deny this is beyond me, but they are denying it over and over and over again.
I know why they're denying it. They have to deny it because they need to maintain that aspect ratio of the things at full height so that they can apply the hidden against the full height thing in the Metablunt curve calculator. They have to maintain that height. And the only way they can maintain that height is if they move the observer to there, which is our point. We see things at distance. It is not the same as a 1,000-foot mountain when it's 30 miles away. Literally reduces its size. Then you apply the hidden to it. That's what you guys are not doing, and you've got to preserve that height by moving the observer. In other words, negating the distance. So if you're going to do that, all right, well, we'll just put the observer in at 0 on the curve calcs and then see what happens, because it'll just destroy your argument again.
Again, the lines that he's put in are totally spurious. So he's got these 2 angled lines. It's like they should be going to the target to measure the angular size of the target, but they're just going out to nowhere and the floor. And then the actual line he's referring to is the midpoint line, because that's all they draw. They draw one line between target and observation, therefore maintaining the size of each target. Whereas in reality, you need to draw 2 lines. One to anything in the foreground, so you can measure its angular size, versus anything in the background. And therefore you would have 2 lines in this instance, 2 lines going between if you can rewind it just so the man is actually in the correct position. So you need a line going to this to get an angular size of this, and the same for this. You need a line going from top to bottom and from the eyes of the observer, so you can make an angle. So you can calculate how big it is versus its distance. This single line is what they're actually using. That's what they're saying. Oh, well, look, I've got a line of sight. Whereas if you look at things in perspective view, Anthony, if you can just go back to your pictures of perspective, we don't have a straight line going to the midpoint where the target would be. Oh, what do you know? It goes up at an angle. Or, to put it in another phraseology, a slant. A slant going up to the midpoint. Slant. So the target, if it was further away, would be up here and smaller. If it was closer, it'd be down here. Whereas in M. Scott Veach's drawing, there's just a straight line between the two, and we don't have a straight line. We have a slant going up towards the target with an angular size reduction at distance, all of which is never accounted for by globeheads. Why? Because they've ignored it so they can engineer in curvature that doesn't exist. That's all this magic trick is. A simple way of excluding the inverse square law that applies to perspective and calling it curvature. That's all they've done. We've lifted the curtain back and gone, here, this is how the magic trick's done. They just ignore perspective, something that we all observe, by putting you in side elevation. And every time we bring it up, they say, we don't have to do it in side elevation. No, you don't, you're right. But it doesn't actually account for how we see things with the angular size reduction in line with the inverse square law. It just ignores that. And why? Well, because you've got to ignore something if there's no curve, because it's flat as a pancake.
And the other thing, of course, is that if this was a scale at 30 miles, that we were looking at a mountain at 30 miles, obviously the mountain has started to drop behind the hidden value of the Earth, right? This is the drop, where the mountain sits in the drop. Because the mountain, basically, if there's, like, say, 5 pixels where this actual height mountain sits in it, it's not going to make that much difference. But when you've got the reduced height of the mountain that's now sat below the hidden line because of perspective, then you apply the drop value, the hidden value, against that height. All of a sudden, it's not going to match any of the observations that we observe in the real world, which is why they've got to argue this point, because it destroys the... Pardon?
Tony, play the rest of the video.
Is there a timestamp that I can stop at?
Hold on. Why? What's on it that destroys our argument?
Everything.
No, specifically what's on it. Tell me the detail that's in the rest of the video. Otherwise, sod off and go and watch it on your own. I want to know specifically what point in his video actually combats our argument that you exclude perspective by putting everything inside elevation. Is there a point that he actually includes perspective?
Yes.
Where does he include perspective? What's the timestamp?
Watch the full video.
No, you tell me where the timestamp is that we need to go to specifically and the exact detail that it gives.
Stop being dishonest.
I'm not being dishonest. How dare you? You're just a perspective-denying religious zealot. That's all you are. How dare you accuse us of dishonesty when you exclude perspective from your mathematics in order to engineer in a curve that isn't there?
Here comes the act, you Nazi mong. Watch the full video.
Oh, sorry, it's just straight to the ad homs, is it? You tell me the timestamp, that's not an unreasonable request. If there is a specific point at that timestamp, I want you to tell me what that point is now, before we go there. Just so I can acknowledge that you do actually understand there is a point being made, and what that point is, before we play it.
About 6 minutes.
And what's the point?
You'll find the point when you watch the
video. No, you tell me. I want to know that you not only know there's a point being made, that the point is relevant, and that you understand it.
There's a reason you're not playing it.
No, I want to hear what it is. I want you to tell me what the point is.
Why aren't you playing the full video?
Because I want you, who is on the panel, not M. Scott Veach, whose video it is, to tell me what specifically is said in the video at the timestamp that you feel destroys our argument.
Tell the audience why you're not playing.
Get on with it, Alan. Stop
Just tell
being
us.
a muppet.
Not stop obfuscating, just tell us.
Watch the full video.
I don't need to watch the full video now. I have watched the full video, and I want you to tell me exactly what point he's making at 6 minutes. We will play it. I've got no issue. There's no time restraint here. I will play it. I want you to tell me the point being made and how it destroys our argument, Alan.
Because it takes the argument step by step. Carry on playing the video.
What steps does he take?
Play it.
No, tell me what the step he takes that destroys our argument. Not step by step. That doesn't mean anything. That's just a load of word salad.
What are you scared of?
I'm not scared of anything. Certainly not scared of you, you little prick. Tell me what it is that he says that destroys our argument. Otherwise, we'll kick you out and then we'll play it without you here.
Play it, you Nazi mom.
No, I'll play it when you're not here if you don't want to actually make the point. Otherwise, there's no point in you being here. We already had the video up. We don't need you here. Hi, Charles. How you doing? Hello?
I see a pattern forming.
Can you hear us, Charles?
Hello. I'm sorry. I had my mic off.
That's all right. No worries.
I see a pattern forming here. I see that M. Scott Veach makes a video, doesn't want to be accountable for his actions, and then sends in cannon fodder, which is either Alan B and or Charles. So, Charles, have you been sent in by anybody?
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my mic set up because I have the watch page up. I'm sorry. Say that again. What?
Are you cannon fodder sent in by somebody on instruction?
No, I just got up and this is my first Monday after the school year is done. So no, I'm just kind of jumping in to see see if I can help out. But the thing is, I'm happy to go on.
Don't need any help. We're asserting something. Thank you, Charles. We don't need any help with anything. We're asserting that you are all perspective denying zealots. We don't need help pointing out that you're perspective deniers and you put everything inside elevation. Thank you for your offer of help. We don't need your help pointing out to our audience that you're all liars, that you all omit perspective, that you all beg the question with R.
No.
Oh, sorry, no. You've got proof of R, scientific evidence.
You said perspective denying.
Scientific evidence. Have you got that?
Let's stay on perspective.
You gave me a conditional acceptance, Charles, that you would provide scientific evidence of R. Now it's been claimed by several other people there is no scientific evidence of R in spite of your conditional acceptance. Do you have that scientific evidence?
I just discovered actually a 14th way of measuring the
not measuring,
the size of the Earth.
Scientific evidence establishing cause and effect. Science. That's what's supposed to be backing this bull nonsense, not mathematics. Nobody says the whole body of mathematics supports this assertion. They say the whole body of science supports it. That's why I'm asking you for scientific evidence, not mathematical. I realise your field is mathematics and I couldn't care less.
So every time I say the word measure, you shut me down.
Yeah, because I'm not interested in measuring
proving something just using
because
math.
you measure it using presuppositions.
Hang on, measure what, Charles?
The size of the Earth.
Sorry, what shape would the Earth be when you're measuring it?
I mean, and we're not talking about with a tape measure, I mean,
whatever way you measure it. What shape Earth are you measuring?
Oh, the globe, of course.
So you're already presupposing that you're measuring a curved Earth that is spherical, Charles. That is known as begging the question. You already assume that the measurements you are taking are of a sphere.
Nathan, hang on. Let's give the guy a chance.
Where do you get us assume, Nathan?
Assume?
Hang on.
You said you were taking measurements of a sphere, the globe Earth. You were taking measurements of the globe Earth, so you already know you're taking measurements of a sphere, don't you, Charles?
That is correct.
No, it's not correct, you stupid buffoon. That's called begging the question and assuming your outcome. It's called a logical fallacy, something that complete retards use when they don't have a decent argument. That would be you, sir.
Charles, hello, Charles.
Yeah.
Is there any way? Is it possible? I mean, I know it's probably difficult, but is it possible for you to begin, your argument without presupposing like anything? Can you start? Can your premise be like Nathan said, Earth? He didn't presuppose a shape. That's the starting point. So kind of walk.
Sure. So Sparkismo, this is the first time you and I have ever spoken. So happy to make your acquaintance.
Hello,
Charles. Hello. So what and you might have missed this conversation I had with Nathan. This is like a month ago. I always tell him it's a two-step procedure. The first step is figuring out the shape of the Earth. The second step is figuring out its size. So if you want to go backwards and say we don't know the shape of the Earth, I am 100% happy to say let's start with a blank slate. We don't know the shape of the Earth. but we can make measurements.
Sorry, Charles, you idiot. You do know the shape of the Earth. It is being asserted in schools. Don't tell me that we are going to start from nothing when we already assert this as fact. If it's already established fact and taught to children, I want you to show me the scientific proof that it is a fact, not tell me how we can make a clean slate and start estimating things from here. This garbage has been asserted for 2,000 years. I want you to show me what you have got to date, not what I can do going forward. This is already established as fact, is it not?
So Scott's video.
Sorry, it is already established as fact and taught in your school, isn't it?
What's interesting is
not what's interesting. Answer me. This is already taught as fact in your school, isn't it?
So that would be presuppositional.
Yeah, that's our point, Charles. So
Okay,
telling me
so
what I
it's
can go forward doing when you already tell people it's true is pointless. I want to know how you have already arrived at this conclusion. What has been done to date
I'm happy to
to
tell you how
prove
I've
it.
arrived at the conclusion. That's why I say
It's not your conclusion, Charles, you arrogant idiot. I don't care about your conclusions. I want to know what science has provided, as science has backed this for 2,000 years, as fact to children. And you continue to do it with what you think you can prove going forward, because you are arrogant.
Proof.
Are you watching the video or what?
No, shut up, Alan. You're far less important. M. Scott Veach is welcome to join like Charles has and get his ass handed to him for his presupposition and his perspective
Nathan,
omission.
Can I continue the conversation with Spurkismo?
No, I will tell you what you can do. If you don't like it, sod off.
Excellent debate channel, Nathan.
Yeah, you still haven't answered my question. I have got an outstanding claim from you, Charles, that you can provide scientific evidence of R. You have asserted this.
Yeah, well,
So give it me! Do you understand? I'm not interested in what you can establish going forward. I want the scientific evidence of R that we have.
But you don't believe any of that evidence. That's
So
the thing. I can give you
we
1,000
haven't
pieces
had
of-
any. You haven't provided any scientific evidence of it. That's why you gave me a conditional acceptance to give it to me, were I to meet your ridiculous conditions. So now we have a situation where you have claimed you have scientific evidence of this R value. I want it now.
In the 6 seconds you'll give me before interruption, right? So you want me to give you a whole body of knowledge in 6.
No, that's why you only get a few seconds. You almost said scientific evidence and then you stuttered and said the whole body of something. No. Repeat back to me so I understand that you're not deaf. Repeat back to me what I'm asking for, please, Charles.
Have you ever had a
No, repeat back to me what I'm specifically asking for. That is what I'm asking you to do. So I understand that you understand what I'm asking for. I have asked for scientific evidence of the R value. I want you to repeat back what I'm asking for, please. Don't laugh at me. Yeah, this is very serious. You teach this to children. I despise you and loathe you as a result of this, Charles. So I want to know what scientific evidence you've got, and I want you to explain back to me that you have understood what I'm asking for.
How many seconds do I get?
Enough to say the words, I understand that you require scientific evidence of R.
I understand that you require scientific evidence of R.
Well, give it me then.
Okay, how many seconds do I have?
Why are you wasting your seconds? Talk.
No, I would like to know in advance how many seconds I have before I'm interrupted.
Well,
because
he just
then I
gave
can
he
plan
just
out.
gave you about 15 that you're blowing. So guess what?
No,
I'm going to tell you something. No,
I-
Scott.
I need him to give me a number because I don't want to start talking and then have him interrupt me mid sentence.
Okay, you want to know? No. You want to know how you avoid Nathan from interrupting you? Is you don't presuppose. You give us reasonable explanations without presuppositions. That's how you keep Nathan at bay.
Yeah, the problem is, and this is the first time you and I have talked as well. The problem is it's a two-step procedure. The first step is figuring out.
No, it's not a two-step procedure. Science has a method called the scientific method. You may have a two-step procedure to prove this going forward. We've already heard that. And I'll repeat what you have made mimic of me whilst repeating back and immediately ignored. Maybe it was because you were too dumb while you were repeating it. Scientific evidence is not a two-step process, Charles. That's why you've been interrupted. Wow, do you understand? I want you to repeat it back without mimicry, because clearly that dulled your senses as you did it. Repeat it back to me in a normal English voice, what I am requiring.
Proper English.
Try
King's
saying
accent.
it with a plum in your mouth.
So Nathan.
You're not repeating back to me what I've asked for, and you failed already by telling me that there's a two-step process going forward.
So science is a one.
So repeat back to me what I'm asking for. Use the words I've used, please, so I understand that you understand what I'm asking for.
Okay, so you want scientific evidence of R?
Yes, please. Can you present that?
Okay. Well, let's just come up with one that I just learned yesterday. If you have
I don't want one that's been learnt yesterday. I want the scientific evidence that has been used for the 2,000 years that this has been asserted to children.
See what I mean?
You haven't found it out yesterday if it's been used for 2,000 years. Is it something you established yesterday, or is it something that we've been established for 2,000 years, Charles? This is getting on my tits.
No, he's saying that he learnt it yesterday.
Let's hear what he's got to say.
Been around for a while.
Let's hear what he's got to say. Charles, tell us about your star.
Okay, so this is one that's actually been used for thousands of years because it's involved in celestial navigation.
Celestial, that is pseudoscience.
See what I mean?
Yeah, that is pseudoscience. That is not science.
Nathan, you're not really
in
interested
astronomy.
In what I have to
They
say.
do not establish cause and effect relationships. It is not science. It is pseudoscience. Do you understand
facts,
that?
Nathan. You are not interested in what I have to say.
Because you're about to give me an
scientific
astronomy example, which is pseudoscience, and you're not acknowledging what I'm saying. I have asked not for pseudoscientific evidence. I have asked for scientific evidence. It is clear that you don't understand what I'm asking for. Otherwise, you wouldn't be going to astronomy, which is pseudoscience.
I didn't say anything about astronomy.
You said you were going to use the
celestial
stars.
Navigation.
Yeah,
Just been
that's
used
using the stars, isn't
thousands
it?
of years.
That's using the stars.
Or lights in the sky. It's using the lights in the sky, Nathan.
Yeah, changing the terminology from stars to lights in the sky does not change that this is astronomy that you are using. It makes no difference. It is not science. Science has independent and dependent variables, the independent variable being a variable you can manipulate. You cannot manipulate the stars. You cannot establish a cause and effect. You cannot do science with pseudoscientific astronomy.
So you ask me for evidence and
scientific evidence! How many times do I have to say I didn't ask for evidence? I asked specifically for scientific evidence, but you are stupid and deaf. Yeah, don't laugh at me, Charles. This isn't amusing. You teach this shit to children. That makes me despise and disgust you. And I'm asking specifically for scientific evidence of the R value. We're still asking the same question, and all we're getting is laughter and you giving me pseudoscience.
You're so angry.
Yeah, I am. I'm disgusted with people like Charles, who appall me because they teach pseudoscience. When I ask for science, they give me what they teach the children, which isn't science, it's pseudoscience.
All right, let me pull up.
No, it's not all right, Charles. You teach pseudoscience when I ask for science. You tell me something that's pseudoscientific when I specifically ask you about 5 times to repeat back so I understand that you understand. Clearly you don't understand what science is. Otherwise you wouldn't be telling me about things that were pseudoscientific.
Said a fruit and veg man.
No, said a man who understands that pseudoscience isn't science, Alan.
You don't understand science.
Yes, I do
all.
understand that pseudoscience isn't science, and astronomy is pseudoscience. If you do not like this, Alan, you can delude yourself. That's perfectly acceptable too. You can all remain in your delusions. That will not change what I state as fact. It is pseudoscience.
So, Nathan, would you like me to make
Provide
another
scientific
attempt?
evidence of R. Yes, please.
Okay, so how many seconds do I have before interruption?
I will interrupt you when you do not provide scientific evidence of R.
Okay. So, see, Nathan, if you would like to actually have a debate channel, normally there are certain rules of sort of etiquette.
Is this your scientific evidence of R? Because it sounds like you're critiquing my production.
Well, no, it's just, you're going to give me 15 seconds? You're going to give me 30
You weren't
seconds?
providing scientific evidence of R. You said there's rules, right? In a debate, my rule is if you don't answer my question and obfuscate by discussing my production style, I will interrupt you and point out that you're not answering my question.
Well, but the problem is you interrupt me usually mid-sentence.
Charles, you are wasting time. You have like wasted 2 minutes of total time where you could be doing something productive.
So I'm not sure who this is. It just says the, and then it has the Mona Lisa.
Don't worry about that. Just worry about giving us scientific evidence of the crap that you teach children on a daily basis about the sphericity of Earth.
So happy to make your acquaintance, the plain truth, but I hope you understand that Nathan's history is that he interrupts people.
I don't know why you have to explain it. I've watched the show. I am well aware. Sure. I am well aware. Okay, just listen. We want you to simply explain from the ground roots.
Oh, you won't permit that. Oh, Nathan will not
why are
permit
you
that.
borrowing trouble? You're borrowing trouble, and you are creating a scenario that has not yet happened. The only time Nathan is going to interrupt you is when you obfuscate or when you venture into presuppositions where you assume your conclusion. Now, if you can...
I'm sorry. So the plain truth, the thing is, you want me to start from the ground zero. Nathan will fly into a rage if I do that.
Why are you creating a scenario that
let me ask Charles a couple of questions.
Well, hang on, just 1 second, Anthony. It would take you 10 seconds to reference one scientific proof. That's all it would take, and then you could talk about it.
Okay, Al Burundi.
Go on.
Fire away.
Al Burundi's classic experiment from the 10th century.
What?
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you now? Because we just discussed this the other day.
Yes, I remember you discussing it, but it's scientific.
Okay, then,
so.
Okay, so go ahead, because the entire video that was presented began with presuppositions and went to his imagining an extension of his triangle to the center of the Earth. So go for it.
What was Al Burundi's observed phenomena?
Well, it wasn't a phenomenon. It was a measurement.
What did he measure?
He measured the dip angle of the horizon from a mountain peak.
But this sounds a lot like Rumpus's argument about measuring with a theodolite, and the argument against that is that we don't know the actual horizon. There is an apparent horizon in play.
Sure, you got an apparent horizon when there's all sorts of mirage effects.
Sure.
However, on days when there's no mirage effects, the horizon's pretty clear.
Yeah, but how do you
Sorry, did you not listen to his answer, Charles? There is an apparent horizon. It is not a useful thing to measure things with. So this basically takes a big fat steaming shit on what you have said is scientific.
Yes,
Any response to that, Charles? This is not scientific.
Differentiates us, because my understanding is that there's no swearing on the panel. I don't know.
I'll do as I damn well please, Charles. That's what I'll do. If people swear on my show, I'll kick them out because it's my show.
Let me have the mic a sec, Charles.
Yes, sir.
The radius of the Earth. We know what the radius is. The radius is from the center point of the sphere to the edge.
Yeah, and it's not a perfect sphere, so it's an approximate number.
The testicle, we know, but how would we measure the radius using a scientific method?
Okay, well, there's another way is to measure spherical excess. Do you know what spherical excess is?
I'm all ears. Tell us.
Okay, so spherical excess means that if you draw a triangle on a sheet of paper, flat sheet of paper, all the angles add up to 180. If you draw another triangle on the surface of a globe, the angles will add up to something greater than 180.
Sorry, I don't understand. I'm a bit lost. Sorry, just to get clarity, what was the observed phenomena?
Hang on.
It's a measurement.
So it's not scientific then. So this isn't science, right? This is mathematical. Yeah, I don't hear about the whole body of mathematics supporting the globe. That doesn't come up very often, Charles.
Again, if you could figure out the formula on your own.
Sorry, Charles, you still haven't given me what I have asked for. Not figure out the formula. This isn't scientific evidence. That's why I got you to repeat it back. You repeated it back in a funny voice, but yet it's you that's the stupid one who doesn't understand scientific evidence because you're giving me, whilst talking over me. You moan about me talking over you, Charles, but now you're talking over me, my friend. You don't understand what I've asked for, despite the fact that I've asked you to repeat it back to me. Is it because you are stupid?
How about visually measuring the drop in 1 mile?
Sorry, scientific evidence, Charles. Scientific evidence. Do you understand what scientific evidence is.
So are we allowed to use a measuring device with
You can do whatever you like so long as I can formulate it into a scientific hypothesis and then express that hypothesis with an experiment that's repeatable.
So using a dumpy level or a theodolite, you can measure the drop in 1 mile.
Drop of what, sorry?
The drop of the curvature of the Earth.
So you are presupposing we have a sphere, Charles. You already know you're on a sphere and it's got a drop value, right, Charles? So straight away, we're not doing science. We're begging the question, Charles, you retard.
Step one is to figure out the shape of the Earth. But
Step one was to measure a drop that you already know exists. So step one in your mind is beg the question, Charles.
Well, no. Step one is to start with a blank slate. There's no begging the question when you start with a blank slate.
You
Nathan.
just said step one was to go and measure a drop value of a sphere.
No. Step one is not to measure the sphere. Absolutely not. That's step two.
Right. Let me ask about the dumpy level.
Yes, sir.
So you claim that a dumpy level will give you the ability to measure, what did you say?
The drop in 1 mile.
And what are you going to put the crosshairs against?
What you do is you go to like a still pond that's a mile wide, and you put you put some target, some real big target like a crosshairs or something that you could see from a mile away, and you put that at eye height, whatever your dumpy level is going to be at, say 48 inches up, like a tripod, 48-inch tall tripod. So you have this far target that's exactly, the crosshairs are exactly 48 inches above the water.
Great. There wouldn't be, though. There'd be an angular size reduction at distance, Charles, because of perspective. Didn't you realise that there's also perspective to be accounted for? You need to account for perspective when you do this as well. Why would you ignore perspective?
Oh my God.
It's not funny. I don't find this in the slightest bit amusing, Charles. Whenever we catch you out, you seem to giggle like a little schoolgirl.
Or a schoolboy,
No, I think you sound more like a girl.
Charles, we do know somebody with a dumpy level, don't we?
Yes, I do. In fact, I'm thinking about purchasing one myself, and I've scoped out a piece of...
Ruhif has one.
Okay.
So why don't we make a suggestion to Ruhif to come up with a scientific experiment to measure whether standing water in a pond follows the curvature of the Earth or not?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Jesse has already done that. That would be a great idea. I mean, I'm all
No,
for
Jesse hasn't already done this.
experiment.
Jesse didn't account
Jesse
for perspective.
Kozlowski has already
Sorry,
done this.
Jesse was a very
I've
good
evidence
example
for your
of a
claim.
perspective denier. So Jesse didn't do this. He didn't account for perspective, did he? He assumed
but
that the
how
target
do you-
on the
how
other
do you
side of the
account for
lake
perspective?
was exactly the same line. So he drew one line, didn't he? One line between target observer, like we do in the curve maths.
When you look through a straw, do you have to account for perspective?
When you look at anything ever, perspective
Yeah,
is a
'cause
thing, Charles.
you've said that
Always.
we
It
don't
doesn't matter
look
if
through a
you
straw.
limit your view to
What if we
answer
do
your
look through a
question.
straw?
I'm not allowed to answer your question. Charles, every time you look at anything ever, perspective is there.
Yeah, no one's ever said it otherwise.
When you look through a straw, Charles.
Well, when you look through a straw, you're narrowing your field of view to essentially just one straight line of sight.
Just
No.
answer
All
that
we're
question.
doing, all we're doing is we're looking
Charles,
at
answer the
something.
question. Do you think that you do not need to account for perspective if you look through a straw?
It's a loaded question.
No, it's not. It's a very simple question. It has a yes or no answer. Charles, I will repeat the question. Please listen very carefully. If you don't listen and you just keep talking, I will repeat it ad nausea and get you to repeat it back to me like one of your naughty children. So, Charles, do you have to account for perspective when you look through a straw? Yes or no?
Loaded question.
Not a loaded question, it is a simple question. There is a thing in our lives called perspective, which you can eliminate by looking at things side on and equidistant from the target and observer. However, when we look through a straw, the word being look, i.e. using your eyeball, and the object we look through being a straw, do we or do we not account for perspective? It has a yes or a no answer attached.
Okay. Well, I'll say no. There's no
Absolutely no. What a perspective denier. Ding, 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 ding. We have a new perspective denier who thinks that when you look through a straw, perspective doesn't apply anymore. What a complete idiot. You are a perspective denying zealot.
Someone called 911. We've got a perspective denier.
Oh my goodness. Hey, Nathan, how come you deny perspective?
I don't.
Really? You sure about that?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Are there any exceptions to perspective?
It sounds
Nathan?
like an obfuscation point.
Well, if you looked at something side on and removed yourself from the actual observation itself, then you could actually draw things equidistant, like you do when you calculate things. That's our point. Yes, you can ignore perspective. That's what you've done to engineering curve that isn't there.
No. I'm asking.
Yes. You have ignored perspective in the mathematics so that you can engineering curve that isn't there, because it seems strange that up until a certain distance, curvature seems to apply the exact same laws of perspective, i.e. they follow the inverse square law, just with a load of obfuscation and presupposition about things getting in the way that don't actually get in the way.
So when something gets twice as far away, does it always get smaller?
Yeah.
Nathan?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Its angular size reduces. It doesn't physically get smaller. That would be ludicrous. But it does get smaller to your vision. The angular size decreases with distance.
So you're saying that if an object, I just want to make.
Oh, we're losing the panel.
By who though?
Dunno.
It's a fake ranty sniper.
Damn it. Well, he's come in to save Charles's ass because he's getting his ass handed to him while he denies perspective. But we got what we needed. According to Charles, if you look down a straw, you no longer need to account for perspective. That was basically it. Is that a real person, Sam? Hello?
Nope.
I seem to have a bit of lag because I don't even see that person joining.
I got him before you could.
Ah, right. Apologies, I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, so who did he remove? Flat Earth Math?
Yeah. I would too if I was on the globe side.
Right, can we not start up a new hangout and get Flat Earth Math back in? This is good.
Okay, I'll start up a new one.
Yeah,
What I'll actually do in that case is I'll probably round out the show at this point and then have my little 10-minute break. So yeah, I'll do that and then we can start a new hangout in the interim period and do a proper intro without getting trolled to all hell. If that's good by you guys, let's just press a few buttons here and I can sort that out. So with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate, and a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do, but if you like the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you have not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!